Hi there, everyone, and thanks so much for tuning in this morning. If you're tuning in and perhaps you may not be a member of this church or a part of our community, today is going to be a great day for you to explore some of the vision that we have for our community and the wider community. If you're tuning in and Manningham Christian Centre is part of your church family and is part of your community, well then today we're going to be talking about seed. Today we're going to be talking about our Let's Build This campaign. And really that campaign is a 2 to 5 year plan. That's 2 to 5 year plan of where we are looking at achieving some really special and great things. Number one of them is obviously our building beautification project, where we aim to rejuvenate the building of where we're at, as well as raising capital funds for next properties or next ventures, wherever they may be. We're planning on planting a school, a new primary school for our community, because our community is a growing one. We are planning on planting a church as well within the next 2 years, which is super exciting to be able to see that growth take place. And the last thing, of course, is the furtherment and the further development of CareNet, our emergency food relief and emergency services support for our community. Today, we aim to be able to raise enough funds to be able to support those projects and those 4 areas of fruitfulness. And so I just want to highlight that again, if you don't call Manningham Christian Centre home, you are absolutely welcome to listen in. But if you do call Manningham Christian Centre home, then today is the day, and it's an opportunity to give and sow into this. I think it's important to note that according to Forbes, there's one particular company and a series of companies, and it's called the Future Generation companies, that these secular companies, mostly secular companies, they sow 19.5% of their profit back into charity and charitable organisations. It is just quite extraordinary to know that both within the life of the church, we equally as individuals believe it's important to sow about 10% plus anything that you'd like to contribute, 10% of our personal income back into the life of the church or the life of God's kingdom. Even the secular companies recognise the importance of sowing back into the community and sowing back into providing and making sure that our community is a stronger and more vibrant one. And that's what we are called to do as a church. That's who we are called to be. We are called to be a church that stretches into and reaches into our amazing community of Manningham and Melbourne. And so today we're going to be talking about seed. We all have seed to sow. We can always and all the time give something. And I know when we talk about resources within the church and really the church as a whole has, in the world's eye, and many Christians, mind you, people get quite nervous about when people start to talk about, especially on screens or up from the pulpit or the platform, they start to talk about raising funds. And that some of that is for good reason. Some of that is because, sometimes people's trust has been betrayed, or money has been allocated where they didn't think it was going to go, or things didn't happen in the way that they were told that it was going to happen. And some of this nervousness is a very real thing, and it's a very real nervousness. But I just want to say to you that you are able to be trusted. We're a church that is governed by a board and governed by incredible finance policies, and every single thing that we do and every single bit of funding that we raise goes and is committed with integrity into the areas of where it was allocated for or given to and given for. And so, this is not about building man's empire. This is all about helping the community and impacting the community, and those sometimes less privileged, or even sometimes those that have enormous resource but feel disconnected from community. And really, that's what we're called to do. So we all have seed to sow. In 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 7, and just behind this little growth here, it says, the Apostle Paul says, each of you should give what you have decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. You don't have to. This is what I'm saying. There's not going to be any guilt trip. There's not going to be any sales tactics. What I'm going to present to you today is simply the understanding and the realization that there is an opportunity to sow seed. And to understand the principle of seed sowing is simply this. If you're going to grow something in your garden and you plant a seed in that garden, well then you're not going to just throw it on the top of the ground and walk away and hope for the best. What you're going to do is you're going to dig a hole, prepare the ground, and you're going to sow that seed into the best spot possible, where it has the best chance at growing, where it's going to have the best light, the right amount of water, good soil around it, so it has the best opportunity to become, whether it's a flower, a vegetable, or a tree, whatever that plant or whatever that seed is going to be. And so the other thing is that you don't plant an apple seed to get a banana. A seed will produce after its own kind. And that is exactly the same in this world. That is exactly the same within the life of the church. It is exactly the same within the world. I understand that according to Forbes magazine, that there is future fund companies that are giving close to 19.5% of their profit, and they're sowing that back into the local community. I just find it remarkable that even in the world understands the principle of seed sowing into the community. And that's exactly what we're doing as a church, the ability to sow back into the community, to be able to develop, to be able to help more people. Because with much, you can do much. With little, you can do little. And so I want you to know that there is absolutely no compulsion or any necessary or any guilt trip behind any of this. There is simply the understanding and the knowing that God establishes us, and He is setting us up for an opportunity to sow into something, sow into that fertile ground that has been prepared. So we know and we understand that our community is only as strong as its relationships. And so often there is this element of relationships that need sowing into. So we are, as a church, all about building strong relationships with the community, and both within our community as well. And so as we grow and as we develop that, you might say, well, Matt, what has relationships got to do with building beautification? Well, it's got a lot. If you were to walk up to a building that you felt was ugly or in disrepair or not being looked after, then you would walk into that going, well, it's obviously full of people that are not necessarily ugly, but are not caring for the environment of which they are in. And so this is why it's important for us, in order to be able to have a strong relationship with our community, we need to be able to have a strong representation, a strong first impression with those that are in our community. A number of people that will come here, and even today I talked with somebody who came here for the first time, and they came in and they said, wow, I never would have thought that this was all in here. And so, it's important to be able to show the community what we have and how we're able to help them. And so each and every single one of us has a seed of faith. It's a faith seed. It's the ability to be able to sow something and therefore sow it to see the result of its growth. So in this environment that we're able to cultivate, we need to understand that God has a way for getting our needs met, our problems solved. That way is rooted in our faith becoming a seed. Well, I can hear you. What on earth does that mean? Well, in Matthew chapter 17, verse 19 and 20, Jesus, this happened here. Just a bit of a backstory first is that the disciples were ministering to a person who couldn't get free of what oppression they were under, and it was areas of mental health, soul health, and in this case, spiritual health as well. And so the disciples came to Jesus privately and said, why couldn't we cast it out? That is the entity that was attacking that person. And so Jesus said to them, because of your unbelief. For assuredly I say to you, if you have faith as a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you. Now, a lot of the time we think, well, God, we can move mountains because I've got a little faith. And often that faith needs testing, that faith needs sowing, that faith needs applying into the circumstance and into the situation. When we apply that faith, when we're able to sow that seed with that expectation, it is okay to have an expectation that when you sow, you're going to reap the reward of what you have sown. And if you sow into the kingdom, God's kingdom, you are in turn going to get a kingdom's reward. If you sow into a relationship, so if I was to send flowers to my wife or give flowers to Anna, then I know that that's going to warm her heart. I know that it's going to mean a lot to her. I know that when I do it, it does mean a lot to her. And so therefore, the relationship and my marriage is going to reap the rewards, the benefit. I'm going to receive the benefit of seeing the joy upon Anna's face, upon seeing that warm her heart. It's in the same way with the kingdom. When we sow into the kingdom, we reap a kingdom's reward. We reap what God is doing in our life and in the kingdom. And so that there is the way that our problem being met and our problem being solved is the understanding that the way of seeing it resolved is rooted in that seed faith, that faith being able to sow. And the Bible says that each of us has been given a measure of faith. And so Hebrews, it says it this way, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not yet seen. For by it the elders obtained a good testimony. By faith we understand that the worlds were framed by the word of God, so the things which are seen are not made of the things which are visible. Oh, that is hard. Faith, to try to describe faith and how we have faith is difficult. Probably the best thing is this. If you're sitting down right now, did you test the chair that you're sitting on, or the couch, or wherever you're sitting? Did you test it? Did you pick it up? Did you turn it upside down? Made sure all the bolts were in it, or whether it's nailed correctly, or if somebody's loosely attached the leg as a practical joke, so that when you sit on it you fall over. Generally speaking, we don't test a chair. We actually look at the chair, our mind recognises this is a chair, it looks safe to sit on, and so therefore we plonk ourselves down on it. In the same way, faith is like that. Now, faith is difficult to navigate. There's no question about that. But faith applied says this, says I believe, therefore I believe that belief in itself, the fuel that is around that belief, is enough to see a result. Even though you can't yet see it. And that's why Hebrews chapter 11 says it's the evidence of things not seen. So faith is this fuel for breakthrough. And sowing a seed in faith is an act of that evidence of things not yet seen. And so we're going to talk about what kinds of seed that might look like. I believe that the Lord has told us as a church to enlarge the place of our tent, stretch our tent, curtains wide, don't hold back, lengthen your cords, strengthen your stakes. That's what God is looking for us to do. Obviously, this is talking about a tent. But what we're talking about, what I'm talking about, is I believe that God has positioned us to reach far and wide, and so that we can expand as a church. It takes faith to expand. It takes faith to grow a church. It takes faith to see people's lives transformed for the better. It takes faith to be stretched in our thinking to include every race, every tribe, no matter from any background, and it takes faith to help somebody that may be lost and destitute into a place of beautiful community and, as I said before, strong relationships. Strong relationships. We are about sowing that seed of relationship. Because for many people in the world, church is this big, bad, mean, ugly thing. And their experiences of church, and you might feel the same way, that experiences of church hasn't been that great. And I want to say to you that, and I just feel to say to you at this time, at this moment, that I'm sorry when church has been that. That is not Jesus' heart. That's not God's heart. That is not the expression of love that he talks about, that he wants for the church. Often what you have experienced is human failure. The failure to represent Jesus well. And as a church, that's what we work for. That's what we place our faith in. The ability to represent Jesus well. Wherever Jesus went, he helped and healed people. Wherever he went, he stopped for the one as well as for the multitude. And that's what we're about as a church. So, seed faith, that's where we sow it. And understand that seeds have seasons. We have faith for generations afterwards. So we are absolutely superbly interested in not just our own generation and in our own lifetime, but obviously for the lifetimes to come. I think of some of the most magnificent cathedrals around the world that have taken 200, 300, 400 years to build. I think of the men and women that worked tirelessly at the foundational level, that they knew that they would never see its completion by the end. They would never see the magnificent cathedral by the end of their lifetime. They'd never see it finished and built. What extraordinary faith, what extraordinary vision for those people who were designing those cathedrals to see it come to pass. So we need to understand that God has a due season for all of the seeds that you plant. I don't know about you, but sometimes I want something now. Get the burger in 3 minutes, otherwise it's free. That sort of mentality. Throw it in the microwave, instant heat, shove it in our mouth. Whatever it might be, we want things instantly. Whereas God is an agricultural God. He works in seasons. He doesn't think the way we think. And he has amazing thoughts about you and I. And those thoughts carry purpose for seasons, and they are linked to seasons of our life. And so God has a due season for all of the seeds that we plant. Good seeds as well as bad seeds. I like what Galatians chapter 6 verse 7 and 9 says this. It says, "Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever a man sows, that he will also reap. For he who sows to his flesh, that is, into the flesh desires, into those desires that are often not good, that often just leave you hurt." That's what that's talking about. So God is not about restricting your life. God is about helping you avoid hurt. Those things that we do that might feel good for a moment, and yet we walk away and deep down we know that we are hurting over those decisions. And so that's what it means. For he who sows to his flesh will of the flesh reap corruption. But he who sows to the Spirit will of the Spirit reap everlasting life. And let us not grow weary while doing good, for in due season we shall reap if we do not lose heart. I love what that says as an encouragement. It's do not lose heart. Do not lose heart. In other words, be encouraged. When you sow that seed of faith, continue to water it. Don't lose heart. Continue to press in and see that harvest and that result. And so seasons is like looking back at where we've been. Where have we been as a church? Where have we been as a community? And right now, our tent is too small. We're outgrowing it. And you might say, well, Pastor Matt, there's lots of empty chairs. Well, sure, at the moment there is. But understand that our building, in terms of creating relationship with our community, our need is greater than what our building can supply at the moment. And that's why we need to sow money into building beautification works and just improving that environment. And of course, capital improvement so that we can look towards the future to perhaps a more effective building. And so that requires a stretching of our faith, a stretching of our mind all the time. So we're going to renovate the building, plant a primary school, plant a church, and expand CareNet. They are all part of the seed that we are sowing into. And we need that seed. These are needs within our community. When I see CareNet and the numerous amount of people that walk in our doors and the people that we are able to just serve with no questions asked because they are in need of food or they are in need of comfort or a shoulder to cry on, so to speak. That is a need within our community, and that is a need that we have great joy in meeting. And so God multiplies our seed to more than our greatest need. This is the beautiful thing about the kingdom of heaven. You see, it's supernatural. In our mind, we would want to sow something to get something. And that's kind of what Galatians was talking about. You're going to reap after what you sow. But you see, when we apply our faith in an amazing way, when we apply our faith into the kingdom, what God says, he says, I'm going to honor that and I'm going to multiply the result. And so nature is a perfect example. If you plant wheat, one grain of wheat, that grain of wheat produces several hundred heads that equally can be resown for more. See, God is in multiplication, and we can see that in the earth. In Luke chapter 5, verses 1 to 11, it says this. It says, Master, we have toiled all night and caught nothing. So these are the disciples. They're out in the boat. They're fishermen. They've gone out to see what they can do in their own strength. And yet Jesus, at the command of his voice, he says, hey boys, let down the net on the other side. It's going to work. And in their mind, it's like, dude, we've been going all night at this and we've caught nothing. Oh gosh. And I love to fish. And I can relate to this. How many times I've stopped to pray, God, please just give me one fish. These guys are out there, they're fishing hard, they're pulling up the net, they're casting again, and not without faith, mind you. And here, Jesus comes along and he says, just do it one more time on the other side. And they say, oh, all right. And then what happens is this supernatural harvest takes place. They have so many fish that they can't pull it in, and they have to call their mates over, and they have to call them over into that place of help, guys, our harvest is too big for us to handle. As a church, that's what our harvest is going to be when we sow a seed in faith, when we place faith behind it and we see God honour its multiplication in that way. Because we can help a city, we can save a city, we can change a life, we can reach every generation, every race, every person, every man, woman, child, and help every marriage in every community. Why? Because we've got Jesus. He multiplies our ability. He sets us up of which seed, of what seed, and where to sow it. So we can always give a seed of prayer, a seed of forgiveness, a seed of love and joy. Earlier on, I talked about the fact that there are different seeds that we can sow. And that is absolutely true. Obviously, seed, we need money. That is an obvious seed. People would give into the temple in the Old Testament. They would give money, but they would also give supplies of other things that they had in order to supply the need of the temple, not to serve the temple, but to serve God in what he was doing through the nation. And so I love what James chapter 5, verse 15 and 16 says. It says, and the prayer of faith will save the sick, and the Lord will raise him up. And if he has committed sins, he will be forgiven. Confess your trespasses to one another and pray for one another, that you may be healed. The effective, fervent prayer of a righteous man avails much. Avails much. The effective and fervent prayer of a righteous man. So you may not have resources to give. Well, let me put it this way. You may not have money to give. And I don't want you to feel obliged to give money. But I tell you what you could do is pray. What you could do is give the gift of encouragement. What you could do is give the gift of a smile, or the ability to see somebody, be forgiven through having that shoulder, providing your shoulder to cry on. And at the moment with COVID, that's a distancing issue. But what is expressed there is to be able to support someone in their life, to be able to support somebody in what they're doing and how they're doing it, how they're living and what they're doing. And so here is this ability. There is always something to give. Prayer, love, forgiveness, whatever it is, keep planting, because God is a God of seasons and God is a God that multiplies our seed, whatever we are sowing. I love what Proverbs says. If a man, woman or child, if someone finds themselves lonely, then he ought to show himself friendly. I know it makes perfect sense, but that is often the case in our world. So what's our next step? If we've got seed to sow, what do we do with it? Obviously, pray. Pray. Ask the Lord for direction in what you should do and how you should do it. And commit to it. Absolutely commit to it. If you need to put a reminder on the fridge, if you need to put a reminder on your dashboard of while you're driving just to pray about somebody or something or some situation, then do that, because the fervent and effective prayer of a person, of a righteous person, is incredibly effective. God multiplies that in an extraordinary way. Plan of when you're going to do it, how you're going to do it, develop it. Ask God for development ideas. In our sense at the moment, we are looking to raise funds. Who knows what God might be able to do, what idea God might be able to plant in your life so that you can connect in that. And obviously, there's give. Execute that plan. Make sure it takes place. We've got lots of options of which you can give by if you're giving finances or monetary. But what we would love to do is hear from you as to what you're committing to. So please email us at office@manninghamcc.org. Write it in the chat, even now. Write it in the chat saying, this is what I know I'm going to be able to do. I know I'm going to be able to pray. Or I know I'm going to be able to give. I know I'm going to be able to sow money and finances and resources into this. And so, again, this is our plan of attack. This is how we can help people build stronger relationships within the community and see the community of Melbourne, of the city of Manningham, strengthen and grown. Thank you so much for watching today. Today, again, it's the 28th of June. We're asking that today you give. But if you can't give today, our plan is that we will continue to develop this. We will continue to talk about this and give you regular updates as to where we are at and how we're going with it all. Because together, everybody achieves more. We're a team, we're a family, and we can press into what God is doing. I know that God's going to honour it. I know that He is faithful. And I know that when we are equally faithful, then He pours out a blessing, the Bible says, that when we're in unity, that we can, then He commands a blessing, He says, when we're in unity. So I want to thank you for watching today, and I'm going to hand this back to Rose now, and Rose is going to talk about a couple of things. Rose is going to pray with you and just be sensitive to what we feel God speaking to us about today. So God bless you. Thanks so much for listening and watching. I really hope this has meant something to you because as a church, we are going to build, we are growing, and the impact that we're making around this community is significant. And I thank you for your contribution as you partner with heaven to contribute into the kingdom here on earth. So God bless you, and thanks so much. See you soon.